It's now my pleasure to invite up tonight's speaker, Alex Antebi. I'm not going to tell you anything about him, but he's going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Shabbat Shalom. Well, last time I was up here on the Bima about 6 years ago, it was my daughter Sophia's bat mitzvah, and I had a great speech all set up. Yet with the rush of feelings, I totally choked. I hope I do a little bit better today. So the parsha this week is Vayetchanan. It's the second portion of Deuteronomy. And in it, people of Israel are basically standing at the edge of entering the promised land. And Moses goes up to God and asks one more time, hey, can I go in? And he's told no. Just go up to the mountain and you can have a look, but you can't go in. So then Moses turns to the people and says, okay, you're about to enter the promised land. Let me remind you of the commandments. Let me remind you of the mitzvot, and let me tell you about the Shema. So we encounter in this portion the words of the Shema. I'll focus on a couple aspects of this week's portion here. One is to just sense what it's like to be in front of a new chapter. Just before starting something new, we want to remind ourselves, as Moses does, of our values. What are the commandments, the laws, the mitzvot that are going to guide us as we go on into this new adventure? Those values are what keeps us together. Second, the Shema is also a prayer that keeps us together in unity. As my kids were little, before going to sleep, I would often give them a blessing and recite the Shema. I'm not exactly sure how or when I started doing this, but it certainly gave me comfort to do this and to pass it on to it. Maybe you had a similar experience. The Shema is a beautiful prayer. You've all heard it and said it many times. But only recently did I start noticing the importance of the word heart in the prayer. You shall love your God, Adonai, with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. And then it says, take to heart these instructions, with which I charge you these days. Impress them upon your children. Okay, can I do this? Page 2. So how do we take something to heart? This is more than just to think about something. And my sense is we live very much in our heads these days. We most often think about things rather than taking them to heart. So I'm going to ask you guys to do a little experiment with me, just for a moment, and put a hand on your heart, whichever hand, it doesn't matter. And just take a slow inhale. Try to sense your heart, and do a slow, full, complete exhale, connecting with that. And just one more time, inhaling. And then exhaling together. All right, thank you. Thank you for trying that. I hope that in that brief moment, maybe you felt a little something, a little physical experience of what it means to have an open and a softer heart. So why was I asked to speak here tonight? I'm not entirely sure. I'm a congregant, like you guys, and maybe you'll be up here one day too by surprise. So I was born and raised in Mexico City, a nerdy and very short kid, part of a Jewish community there. And now I'm proud to be among the few Jews, Mexican Jews in the Bay Area. You might know a couple of them. After Mexico, I was a bit of an errant Jew, living in the East Coast or Europe or here. And I met Nina, my wife, who is here tonight, through friends from Stanford. Nina was born in Vietnam and came to California when she was around 10 years old. And we have two daughters who are now 18 and 19. One of them is here, Dahlia. And my daughters, I hope they're not too confused about their identity. They're Jewish, Vietnamese, Mexican, and American. So life keeps surprising me, and I recently was nominated and agreed to join the board here at Beth Am. And the Hazon Committee report that recently came out says the board should see itself not as directors, but as servants to the congregation. So think of me as your servant. So I ask, what's the best way that I can serve Beth Am? And I decided to do so by expressing my gratitude tonight by sharing my top 10 list of thank yous to Beth Am. So as I do this, maybe you can think of one thank you to Beth Am, something you've received. Maybe it's a jelly-filled donut. It doesn't have to be too deep. So, number one, thank you, Beth Am, for being inclusive. We had just arrived to the Bay Area from New York in 2008 with two daughters, 3 and 4-year-olds. And I wanted a community where Nina, who hasn't converted, would feel comfortable. And Josh Becker, a friend of ours, now senator, suggested that we all join Beth Am and have our kids go to Shabbaton. After the first Saturday, Nina remarked how welcoming Beth Am had felt for her. And I was happy to feel that there was a community that would welcome her and our family. Beth Am is a big and welcoming tent. Number two, thank you to Beth Am for introducing me to many new friends. Many of you are here in the audience. And I arrived here in 2008. I didn't know many people with kids our ages, let alone Jewish. Number three, thank you, Beth Am, for some holy moments. By holy, I mean separated from the day-to-day living experiences. So one such moment, for example, was just down at the Beit Keilah a few years ago. At the end of Shabbat, our families would get together with little young kids, and the youngest kids would run around with the spices and have everybody smell the spices, make sure you got a whiff. That was certainly a holy moment for me. Number four, thank you, Beth Am, for introducing me to Musar. And somebody just mentioned Musar one day and recommended a book by Alan Morinis, who's a Canadian anthropologist filmmaker. He wrote Everyday Holiness. I got curious, I got the book, and I've tried to practice everyday holiness. It deals with 18 inner traits. Among them, my favorites are humility, gratitude, and loving kindness. I shared it with my daughter, and she said it's written in pretty accessible language. And it has a practical idea that I like, which is that holiness is something we can practice every day. And by practice, it means we're not going to get it right. It's kind of like a yoga practice. You're not going to get it exactly right, but we keep trying. Number five, thank you, Beth Am, for helping me grieve. So grief is very hard. And at some point, we'll all go through it. It's just part of the human condition to get attached to others who will inevitably pass away. And grieving is a process of healing and honoring their memory. My father, Albert, passed away about 4 years ago, pretty suddenly. And I immediately went to Mexico City and sat Shiva there for about a week. And I came back here, but I still deeply felt his absence. So I decided to say Kaddish in his memory. And I started attending the Thursday Minions. It's a very welcoming and empathetic group, and we all love Louise's poem selections. Number 6, thank you, Betham, for teaching me Torah. So I went to Torah study at first for the bagels, but ended up getting a lot more. We could spend hours on just 1 or 2 sentences. Later, as I joined the Thursday lay-led minyan, after a few weeks, I realized that people took turns teaching. I was a bit terrified when Louise and Joanne asked me if I could teach a Devar Torah. It was like, wow, the last time I did that was at my bar mitzvah about 40 years ago. But this small group is a very friendly audience, very forgiving. And I was really glad for this opportunity. I actually enjoyed teaching Torah and learning by teaching. So I've given over 10 Devar Torahs, and I'm still attending the Thursday Minyan. This one would be like 11 or 12. Number 7, thank you, Betham, for helping me repair the world. So Tikkun Olam is certainly a mitzvah, but often we don't know how to do it as individuals. Where do we go? How can we serve? And Betham has given me many opportunities to do this. Rabbi John invited our families to help out with homeless shelters, food pantries, and with the Home and Hope program, I even slept back there in the social hall a few nights. I also joined the Equal Start effort where we've tried to promote more equitable early childhood care and met some great people doing that. So that's been very rewarding. Number 8, got a couple more. Thank you, Betham, for believing that I can lead. So 9 years ago or so, I was invited to a leadership training class called Atid. And I learned a bit about the clergy, the staff, past presidents, and really the behind-the-scenes Betham. Now, as my kids were going off to college, I was invited or asked if I would join the board, and just a very small commitment. No, not too many hours, really, right? Well, anyway, I'm very grateful for this opportunity to serve, and looking forward to the board retreat next week. Number 9, I want to thank the Hazon Committee. I'm very grateful for the work they've done. And they say, never let a good crisis go to waste. So they wrote a wonderful report with a ton of work over several months, focused on the process involved in the search, selection, integration, and evaluation of a senior rabbi. And they give wonderful suggestions for improvements. This report is now available to all. And I think we're lucky to have such an engaged and dedicated members having thoughtfully prepared this. I do take their advice to heart. I paraphrase the report by saying, our diversity can be our strength if we allow it to be. Number 10, thank you to our clergy. I feel blessed to have spent time with Rabbi Sarah, Rabbi John, Rabbi Heath, and with our cantor. And they each have brought me special gifts. So that's my top 10. And in summary, I just offer a simple formula. First, try to connect with our hearts. Second, soften your heart by finding something that you're grateful for. And finally, number 3 would be to turn towards a fellow member and know that we can all be together in a big tent. Shabbat Shalom.